EVO.
Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 172. We're going to continue our coverage of the Nancy Guthrie disappearance with the latest video posted by Savannah Guthrie, Sunday night, February 15th, 2 weeks after her mother's kidnapping.
I wanted to come on and it's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and I just wanted to come on and say that we still have hope and we still believe. And I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here. And we believe. And we believe in the essential goodness of every human being. And it's never too late.
This video is the first that Savannah Guthrie has posted since the surveillance images and video were shared by the FBI showing a man approaching Nancy Guthrie's door. This week on Criminal Mischief, I discussed the case with retired homicide detective Cloyd Steiger. Now, Cloyd isn't involved with the investigation, but he did share his insights based on what we know so far. Here's that conversation. I can't wait to hear all your insights, Cloyd. But first, before we get there, let's why don't you tell us who you are and your amazing career so people know like you're legit.
Yeah. My name's Cloyd Steiger. I'm a retired Seattle Police homicide detective. Had 36 years on the Seattle Police Department, 22 years of that in homicide as a detective. And then I was the chief criminal investigator for the Washington State Attorney General's homicide investigation tracking system after that.
Great. So, okay, let's set the stage here. We're going to talk about Nancy Guthrie's kidnapping. When you found out about it from the very beginning, this case has been just hitting the headlines. It's now 2 weeks since she's been taken.
Right.
Around 2 weeks. What was your thoughts about it going through this process?
Well, I didn't pay a lot of attention at the very beginning. I mean, I knew about it. My thoughts were it was a targeted event. It's not a random person that just happened to pick this house. And they had a plan, a master plan. It probably went sideways on them. And, that was my initial thought.
Mm-hmm. And why did you think that this was definitely targeted? I mean, based on just location, like walk us through.
No, they're not going to, this house, the houses are all separate there and far apart. They weren't just hitting random houses looking for people. You'd have other attempted break-ins at other houses and things. And the fact that she was Savannah Guthrie's mother, I mean, people that live in that area know that. I wouldn't have known it, but I mean, people that live there, hey, that's where Savannah Guthrie's mother lives. So, and people think, oh, she must have a ton of money, So that's why I think it was a targeted event.
So you think that this is about money?
Yes. Well, at least on the surface, it could be about something else. I don't know. At some level, it's about money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, why do you think it took them 3 days, whoever the perpetrator or perpetrators are, to get a demand letter to, they give it to the media? Like, are these people smart? Like, what's your take on, do you think it's more than one? What do you think's going on here?
Well, yes, I'm sure it's more than one. it's two or three. They may have gotten in and were over their heads and panicked a little bit at first, and then decided to settle down and send a demand letter, because there was no demand letter for a couple of days. But wait a second, if this is a kidnapping, why is there no demand letter? So there finally was. Presumably, there was information in there that shows it was a legitimate demand letter and not just. I mean, there are a couple of wackos that sent demands that I know that they weeded out, but there was information in there that the person had to have been in the house to know, that made them think this is a legitimate demand letter. So that's what set on that course. I don't really know, other than the fact that they panicked or got over their head, why they didn't send a demand letter early.
Why do you say two or three people? Because now that we know the latest, I believe it was on Friday, the FBI released some really scary photos of one suspect, and he's wearing a ski mask. You can see his eyes. You can see the FBI has put him at 5'9", 5'10", with an average build. He was last seen wearing dark clothing, black gloves, sneakers, and a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack backpack.
Yeah, that guy is not the brains behind this operation. He was kind of a bumbling fool. You can see in the video, he didn't think well enough about the camera, and he gets some vegetation, trying to hold the vegetation over the camera. He's involved, but he's not. I don't think he's the main guy. And it takes more than one person to do this generally, because there's a lot of different aspects to this. People don't think this out, but it takes two or three people to control her, to, transportation, get in there, whatever reason. And so that guy he's not the brains of this operation. I mean, he's basically a worker bee, I think.
So why does it take two or three people? Talk a little bit about that, because I think that when you think on the movies or something, because she's 84 years old, she's, you've got the advantage, the upper hand as somebody who's breaking into her house in the middle of the night and terrifying her. Why would it take, or in your opinion, two or three people to pull this off?
It does. They could control her, but in order to get in there, to get a hold of her, take her outside. If she resisted, it could take a minimum of two people to get her outside, probably. Somebody to be behind the wheel of a vehicle to take off. You can't put her in the car. Oh, I'll be right back. And jump in the car and leave. It just doesn't make sense that one person would do this.
Okay. All right. So it seems like there's some criticism happening where the sheriff's office has been, accused of not sharing information with the FBI and not inviting them in, because in a case like this, it's the Pima County Sheriff's Office jurisdiction, and they have to invite the FBI to help. And the FBI brings tons of resources and behavioral analysis unit and all of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're right. This is the Pima County Sheriff's Office's jurisdiction. Is their case. The FBI cannot come in and take the case over, because there's no federal nexus to this case. They do. I'm sure they did offer themselves up to help, and eventually that was accepted. It may have been at first the sheriff's office didn't realize this was going to be such a big deal as it was. I don't know the reason for any delay. And I'm sure that, at the worker bee level, they're all talking and cooperating fine. It's the administrators that have these problems. It's not the worker bees doing all the work. So I think, first of all, that a little overblown. And about the sheriff not giving up enough information, in my opinion, he has given up way too much information. He should keep all this stuff close to his vest, and so should the FBI, so that when somebody comes in and says they have information about this case and they tell you something, if it's all out there, it's been on the news, that you don't know that it's legitimate. But if they tell you something that they couldn't know unless they were there, that then this is the right person or a good witness or has good information. So, they give way too much information. They shouldn't have given up whether or not they got DNA in the house or not. The sheriff, he's a little free with his words. He's not, Tucson's a relatively, big area, but it's not that big. And so he's never had anything quite like this before. And the problem with an administrator is, administrates. They don't do the investigation. They don't run the investigation. They have people that work for them that do, and they should be kept in the loop of what's going on, but don't be out there giving up stuff. Usually, in major events, major investigations I was involved in, we'd have meetings every day and with chief level officers to talk about the stuff that we were not going to release. Of course, as usually happens, they go out and release the information we told them not to release all the time. But
why, Cloyd? Why?
Because they're administrators, they want to get in front of the cameras, and they're just they think I'm the boss. Well, you're the boss, but you're the one with the least amount of experience or information in handling a case. So they just
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit, because it seems like that's so tough, especially when you're dealing with like media companies who are getting the demand letters, and they're trying, you can tell like TMZ is trying to capitalize on the fact. I mean, they're a news organization, so they want to get, that's their job, is to, you know, talk to the public, let everybody know like, hey, we got this scoop and this is, but they're also trying
to the credit of, I forgot the guy's name that runs it. He has in interviews with news agencies, I can't talk about that part of this letter. I can't, because they asked me not to release that. So it's good that he's not.
Yeah. And so it feels like, hearing you say that, like, I'm always surprised, but then not surprised about how these administrators go out and kind of throw investigators under the bus. And I don't know if that's happening here, but
happens
like
all the time.
But
it happens
why?
all the time because they're administrators. You take an administrator of a police department and a corporate level administrator, their job is basically the same, personnel and stuff like that. They don't know anything about the actual nuts and bolts of the work. They were, police chiefs and sheriffs were probably cops at one point, but shot up so fast that they don't have any experience at this. And then they start shooting from the hip, basically, and saying things that they don't realize necessarily could harm the investigation, but it does.
How frustrating is that? How frustrating do you think that these investigators are right now? Because everybody's watching this case. Everybody's like, we were pre-gaming before we started about this latest new detail that was announced. I believe it was today, where they found another glove 2 miles away from the home. And break that down a little bit for us, for the layperson.
Well, you find a glove 2 miles away from the scene. That's not good. It looks like the glove in the video, maybe, but unless there's a direct link to that scene, that glove alone, you might be able to find the person who had it, and maybe they'll say, but even though, if it was a person with no criminal history, it's going to take genealogy or something to find out, and they could tell you, I was working on it, I did throw that glove there or something. It may or may not have anything at all to do with this case. You hope it does, but 2 miles away, there's no direct link. Now, if you have the other DNA in the house and it matches that glove, that's great. Now you have your reason to believe that's involved in this. But finding a glove 2 miles away is not a big breakthrough unless you can tie it directly to the scene. Because it looks like the glove in that video. Nah, sorry, not good enough.
So it sounds like they found DNA inside of her house that they are thinking is suspect DNA. It sounds like.
Sounds like it. That's what they're saying. I don't know where they got the DNA from. Could it have gotten there innocently by some person that's not involved in this crime? They say not. So, because they've checked it with everybody that had access to the house, cleaners and this and that. But, I hope so. I hope it was something that they could say for sure, something they know the suspect moved, or I doubt they had blood in the house, because I know they would have told you that. I mean, blood other than the victims.
Right.
But, I'm sure there is a lot of stuff about the inside of that house in this crime scene that they have not released, and they shouldn't.
So the latest thing too is that the sheriff's office decided to send this DNA evidence to a lab that they already had a relationship with. It sounds like a contract with in Florida. And now online there's theory going all around where they should have sent it. They're being criticized for not sending it directly to the FBI, and that, what's going on here?
Well, first of all, I've heard a lot about this, how the FBI has the latest and greatest evidence processing systems. That's not necessarily true. There's nothing wrong with these private labs. They're all certified, and, they can get stuff done really fast, first of all, comparatively. And, the other critics, that way you can't get directly into CODIS. Well, that's not true either. A lot of these private labs have direct access to CODIS. I have a friend that has a private lab in California. She has direct access to CODIS. You have to qualify for it and do all this certification, but she does. She can directly rent. Didn't have to go through the FBI or law enforcement lab. They have direct access. So those are specious arguments as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about this case blowing up like it has? Are you surprised? Like you've covered so many cases. What do you think's happening that's causing it just seems like every day there's something, every minute there's something
It's
new.
wall to wall, yeah, and it's because Savannah Guthrie is a nationally known person is involved, and it's also partially because there's a huge appetite for true crime stuff out there, big followers, and they're all over this. That's not necessarily bad. I mean, you might find somebody that has some information that comes through this. The problem here is you got this case, this national case, and they're getting thousands and thousands of tips phoned in or sent in. They have to go through those tips and separate the wheat from the shafts. 95 or 99% of those tips probably have nothing to do with this case, but you don't know that. You don't know which one does. There probably are a couple of tips in there that are really good, but you have to get to those and you have to separate. So you have to have a whole staff. This whole job is to triage the tips.
Mm-hmm.
Think that this is nothing to, this might be something, or this is really hot, and take the ones that are really hot right to the front. And the other ones, you have people that are going to run them down, but it's just, it's hard. I've had high profile cases where you're buried in tips, and and eventually, there was one case I had where I was the primary, so I didn't get all the tips. They went to other people that were triaging them. But when I came in the morning, I'd always kind of look through the tips that came in overnight really quickly, and I saw a tip that I remembered. And later, when the case was resolved, that tip didn't have enough information to move on. But when that tip was resolved, I realized that was a good tip because they saw the real guy, because they described the car he was driving and how he looked. And so when I got the information about who this guy was and what he might be, and I pulled up his picture, and I thought of that tip immediately. This looks like the guy in that tip, and he drove a car like they said in that tip. They didn't have a name or anything. He just happened to be in the area and saw this guy. So, it was there, but there was nothing to do with it at that time. And other tips came in. Mm-hmm. When you start getting, and the other thing is when you get these tips, when you start getting tips from several different sources that don't know about each other, about the same person or the same area or something similar, same car, that's a clue. You gotta prioritize those tips, because more than one person sent that in, independent of each other. And that's a big, strong thing to look for.
And wouldn't that make sense where you'd want to have the FBI's help with resources with processing these, because I don't know, it just seems.
Although reality is that's grunt work, and it's probably done by civilian staff members that are trusted, experienced, and know the difference between what's a hot tip and what's not. But you don't want your investigators. There's too many other things for them to do. It's probably being done by staff members.
Mm-hmm. But like I'm assuming that this isn't like a huge agency where.
No, it's not. The resources of the FBI, a perfect example is that video that they were able to get. That's a great thing the FBI can do. Those type of things. They have access to all these data banks stuff. They have money to do this stuff, and the resources. And Pima County Sheriff's Office isn't that big. Matter of fact, I heard that they have only 6 full-time homicide detectives in that agency, which didn't surprise me because they probably don't have a lot of murders. But so they needed the help. But a lot of it, this tactical stuff, is a great. The Secret Service does a lot of that too, like phone stuff and geo-tracking and all that stuff. And then the Border Patrol out in the desert they're good trackers, and help out with that stuff. So getting all these resources is great. But, the worker bees are the worker bees. And the best part of using the FBI especially is all this technical investigation stuff that because they have the resources and the databases, they can go after that stuff.
I mean, I think that's why it's so surprising and people are glomming onto it in the news and social media about how the sheriff's office might have, taken too long to ask for the help, and why would you not immediately
Well, it's because they didn't realize the nature of the monster. They didn't realize what a huge thing was going to end up being. To them, it was just, it was a serious case. They were taking it seriously, as a missing person, maybe possible abduction, but maybe they didn't realize it was going to take on a life of its own like it did.
hmm Because, like, the thing that's so interesting to me, and of course, I'm doing my armchair detective stuff, so I'm sorry, but like the whole ransom note and looking, having the linguistics, going through and looking to try to
Well,
figure out.
statement analysis, yeah, statement analysis is a science where they go through it and tell things by the way, the structure of the sentences and things like that. The other people you want to have involved in this, because I understand a lot of these came through email, is internet crimes against children task forces who go and find these kiddie porn people all the time and use these VPNs. And they have ways, it still takes time, but they have ways of tracking that back to its source. And I'm sure they are, because the
hmm
FBI would know that. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, they're the ones that would, there's so many fronts on this investigation, it feels
Right.
like, where they need to have really specialized people to determine, are these real ransom notes?
Right.
What's going on? Because she's, 84 years old without the medications, and
Right.
you know, it feels like, do you think she's still alive? What do you think?
I don't. I don't think I think she was dead the first day. And I thought that immediately. I handled a case, I was involved in a case. I was a primary in 93, 94. Mamie Louie, who was the widow of Yen Louie Portrait Studios. And she was a well to do 80 some year old woman, lived down in Stewart Park area, and she was abducted. And there were ransom demands. And she was dead the first day. Her body was found later. It took about a week, but she was found down a ravine. And they killed her either accidentally or on purpose. I don't remember. It might have been accidentally, but it was, and she was, that was a bunch of Asian gangbangers that did that. But they kidnapped her right in the middle of the afternoon out of her driveway. And so, it kind of reminded me of that. She was dead right away. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope she's still alive, but
And
especially
in
now.
that case, was it about money?
Well, yeah, they made ransom demands. That's what they were doing. They were trying to, but they
hmm
were also like the gang that couldn't shoot straight, right? And they screwed everything up and killed her. And there's a reason why, they keep putting out these things about we want proof of life, and there's a reason why they're not getting it because the kidnappers don't have it.
You think that's why?
I think that's why. Yeah.
So Savannah Guthrie just made another post tonight, and it basically was like, do the right thing. It's not too late,
Right.
to the kidnappers. What do you
Right.
think's going on with these family videos, and
Well,
what's the
I
strategy
think
there?
I think they're being coached exactly what to say, and I have no problem with that. And people are trying to tell them what the things, but I don't think they're going to work. I mean, they're not going to work because these people they realize they're too deep in, especially if she has died. They're too deep in. It's not like we can call King's X and go back and forget it. It's not going to happen.
hmm Now, do you have the latest, or the Bitcoin? How it sounds like there was one Bitcoin that was put into this account. Like, do you know what's going on with the Bitcoin? And
I think they just put a little bit in to make sure the count worked. I don't know. And I know it used to be you couldn't ever trace anything in Bitcoin, but I know that's not true anymore.
mm,
And that's another thing the FBI would be helpful. Maybe the Secret Service, because Secret Service, their main job is financial crimes. Their main
mhm.
job, they're not. Their main job isn't to protect the president of the United States. That's just a section of the Secret Service. They're mostly bank fraud and all the stuff, and that involves all, and they have all the technology, and they can probably track a Bitcoin and of course put it into an account. And then you see where it was withdrawn later and what account it went into and that type of thing. I'm sure that's true.
Well, why do you think that they said that they were going to pay in the video after
Well, because they probably would have put the money in there if they'd have given proof of life and hope to get her back, and then
Mhm.
they could still try to track them later. They would have put money in there, I'm sure.
Okay, so you think that's why they didn't? Because remember, there was that Monday deadline of like,
Right.
give us the money. And
Yeah.
so they didn't, because they didn't
Because
have any
they,
proof of
they
life.
said we need proof that she's okay because they know if she's gone, they're just throwing that away. And so, yeah, and she's. I mean, again, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. She's not okay, and they have no. If they had proof of life, they would have sent it. They would
Okay.
have.
So, what do you think? We've talked about it being targeted, and, you know, do you think family members, do you think, like, how close do you think that they were to Nancy based on what you know so far?
Well, they did go in that house and they're in there 41 minutes. They think from the time that I think the time they saw the Ring camera was set off to the time her pacemaker disconnected from the cell phone, so she was physically too far away. So they were in there a long time, and they must have felt comfortable enough. I don't know why they were in there a long time. Maybe they got in there and were starting to get cold feet and deciding what to do. I'm not saying it was family, but I wouldn't rule that out either. Yeah.
I mean, that seems like, doing this true crime for years now, it feels like one of the common denominators is like you can't plan for everything. It's just, and especially like a kidnapping. Like, do people even get away with kidnappings, especially high profile ones? Like in your career,
they don't. Yeah, no, they don't.
I mean, it feels like the hopelessness of a bank robbery, where it's a big bank robbery. Why would they want to kidnap? Is it just, what do you think? I mean, a high profile kidnapping, you don't see, do you know of one offhand where the people actually got away? With the money.
I don't know of any, that I can think of.
Yeah.
They got them all. Patty Hearst, and then she got into that Stockholm syndrome and became part of the SLA and actually took part in bank robberies, but they got those people eventually. Lindbergh baby, they got them. And the reality is these type of kidnap for ransom, despite what television will tell you in movies, almost never really happen. They're very, very rare. And that's why people don't have a lot of experience in this. And that's why, and including the suspects or the investigators. And so that's the reason things don't go smoothly.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think that this was maybe a botched murder that went wrong and people were like, let's do this kidnapping?
Well, if they're going to do a botched murder, why do they even leave? Why do they take her? First of all, she was alive when they left because she bled on the porch. Dead people don't bleed.
Yeah.
So she was alive when they left the house. And, I don't think it was a, botched burglary or robbery. I hear that. And it's like, when you go in there and people break into a house and they're confronted, they run. That's what they do. They leave. They don't, because, you're going to take a Class C felony and advance it to a potential death penalty case. I don't think so. So, yeah.
Oh, right. They have the death penalty still in Arizona.
Yeah, sure they do.
Do you think these kidnappers will be caught?
Yes, I do. Especially if they have DNA. If they have DNA, they definitely will be caught. It's just a matter of when they swabbed the right cheek, or maybe that's what they did with these people. They got them, had reason to go after these people for whatever reason. They swabbed their cheek, and then you got to wait for the results to come back, which shouldn't take too long if they're using a lab that's quick. And yes or no, and then you move on, and I don't know what was going on with the Range Rover. If, it has a tracking system and it showed it was in the neighborhood about that time, that might be the reason they went after it. I'm just speculating. I don't know.
Yeah. This was the Range Rover that they
impounded, and they're probably processing it for Nancy's DNA. See if they find that. That would be a huge break if they found Nancy's DNA in that car. And if she was in that vehicle, they will find it. You can't clean a car good enough to get rid of all the DNA, especially if she's bleeding and stuff.
Well, thank you so much for the update, Cloyd. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you. And what are you working on now? Let's talk about your book a little bit.
Well, yeah, I'm not really. I have another book that is 3/4 done, but I kind of had to put that aside. Had other stuff going. I'll go back to it soon and get that. Other than that, I'm not really doing anything with that.
Okay. Well, what is your Seattle Homicide behind remind us?
Oh yeah, it's Homicide. The View from Inside the Yellow Tape is my main book. Yeah. And then I wrote the other book, Seattle's Forgotten Serial Killer, Harry Jean Grant.
Great. Well, good to see you.
All right. Good to see you, Carolyn. Thanks.
Okay. Bye, Cloyd.
Bye.
Up next, Criminal Mischief bonus content. Here, my co-host Brandon Morgan and I will discuss the Nancy Guthrie case, and we'll also weigh in on the recent sentencing of the au pair in the 2023 double homicide plot involving her lover, Brendan Banfield. That's a case we've been covering on Criminal Mischief for quite some time. And also remember to check out our Criminal Mischief YouTube channel at evocreative.com. And as always, thanks for listening. From Pie in the Sky Media, Criminal Mischief is an EVO production, recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself, music by Soundstripe. For EVO Creative, I'm Carolyn Ossorio, your writer and host.